Right. So today we're opening up the wardrobe and taking a deep dive into the Chronicles of Narnia.
Ah, Narnia.
You provided some excerpts, and we're going to unearth the hidden gems here, the
Yeah,
the thought-provoking bits,
right.
the things that'll make you see these stories in a whole new light.
I think you're going to find some. Narnia's, everyone thinks of it as a world of whimsy and Turkish delight and
Mhm.
fawns and talking animals. And,
Yeah.
it's so much more than that.
Right.
C.S. Lewis was very intentional about exploring, profound concepts of faith,
Right.
sacrifice, good and evil, really the big things in life.
Yeah, and he does it through the characters and how those themes play out, especially the Pevensey children.
Right.
They stumble into Narnia. They're not wide-eyed innocents for long, are they?
Not at all. They're thrust into some situations that demand courage and responsibility.
Yeah.
And they really have to grapple with the consequences of their choices. I mean, even Lucy, the youngest, the first one to discover Narnia, but her initial wonder is really quickly tested.
Yeah. She encounters Mr. Tumnus,
Right.
this kind of fawn who's kind of caught in this web of loyalty and fear.
Right.
He's forced to make this difficult choice, obey the White Witch or help Lucy.
Exactly. And his decision, small as it may seem, highlights that ripple effect that choices have. Even one act of defiance can set in motion a chain of events.
Hmm.
And it can really topple tyranny. And, it makes you wonder about the Mr. Tumnus moments in our own lives. There's seemingly insignificant choices that might have a bigger impact than we realize
Absolutely.
at the moment.
Yeah, and it's like, even in a world that's dominated by a figure like the White Witch,
Right.
these little glimmers of resistance,
Right.
these acts of courage can really plant the seeds of change.
Exactly.
But let's talk about Edmund for a second.
Okay.
His story feels particularly relevant even outside of Narnia.
Oh, for sure. I mean, his temptation by the White Witch, his desire for the Turkish delight,
Uh-huh.
the power, that speaks to a very human struggle.
Right.
It's this instant gratification versus long-term consequences.
Mm.
I think we all face those Turkish delights in our own lives.
Oh, yeah.
Those alluring shortcuts or temptations that promise immediate satisfaction.
Right.
But, they might lead us down a dangerous path.
Yeah, it's like he embodies this inner conflict we all experience.
Absolutely.
Do we prioritize our own desires, even if it means betraying people?
Right?
Or do we choose the harder path, the one that requires sacrifice?
Exactly. And the cross of his choices, the way it ripples outward, impacting not just himself, but the fate of Narnia.
Right.
It's a stark reminder that our actions have consequences. We might think we're only hurting ourselves.
Yeah.
But so often, those closest to us are caught in the crossfire.
It's a sobering thought, but I think it's a hopeful one, too. We have the power to make choices that uplift others,
Yeah.
to contribute to something greater than ourselves. But we can't talk Narnia without talking Aslan,
Of course not.
this majestic lion,
Right.
the true king.
Yeah.
But there's this paradoxical power about him
For sure.
that I find so fascinating.
Yeah. Aslan really embodies a kind of leadership that challenges our conventional notions.
Yeah.
He's fierce and he's gentle.
Right.
He's kingly yet self-sacrificing. He doesn't rule through brute force, but through love, compassion,
Right.
and really a deep understanding of this deeper magic that governs Narnia.
Okay, let's unpack deeper magic a little bit.
Okay.
It's mentioned throughout the books.
Right.
It always felt a bit elusive to me.
Yeah.
What exactly is it? How does it shape the events in Narnia?
It's not just spells and enchantments.
Right.
It's more like the underlying order of things,
Mm.
a fundamental force that guides events and destinies.
Okay.
You could almost think of it as the source code of Narnia.
Right.
And it's connected to the creation of the world itself.
Right. We see this in The Magician's Nephew
Exactly.
with Diggory and Polly.
Right.
And they're pulled into this whole other world
Right.
by his eccentric uncle.
Exactly.
And their actions inadvertently lead to the birth of Narnia, sung into being by Aslan.
Sung into being by Aslan. I mean, the very elements of that creation are steeped in this deeper magic.
Right.
The apple grown from a seed of another world planted on a hill overlooking that newly formed valley.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not just a random act.
Right.
That sets the stage for everything that unfolds in Narnia,
Yeah.
even influencing where that iconic lamppost appears,
Right.
the one that Lucy later stumbles upon.
Yeah, it's like C.S. Lewis is giving us a glimpse behind the curtain.
I think so.
He's showing us how this deeper magic is woven into the fabric of Narnia,
Right.
into the geography, the history, the destinies of the characters.
Absolutely.
And we see this deeper magic manifesting throughout the Chronicles. The White Witch's eternal winter, for example.
Right.
That's not just a plot device, is it?
It's not just a plot device. It's a symbolic representation of her reign. It's cold. It's harsh.
Yeah.
It's life-denying.
And then when Aslan arrives, the winter thaws,
Yeah.
spring emerges.
Right.
It's not just a change in weather, it's a symbolic shift.
Exactly.
A sign that good is overcoming that oppressive rule.
Those seemingly simple elements of nature become infused with deeper meaning. And that's just one example.
Right.
You know, we could spend hours exploring all the symbolism embedded throughout Narnia,
Yeah.
each detail hinting at these larger themes that Lewis is exploring.
Yeah, before we get too lost in the weeds here,
Right.
I'm curious about how this deeper magic, this underlying force,
Yeah.
impacts the characters themselves.
Right.
The Pevensies, they're not just passive players, are they?
Definitely not. Their experiences in Narnia, their encounters with wonder and peril, shape them. They grow, they learn, they face their fears, they discover these hidden strengths. It's almost as if Narnia acts as a crucible, you know, forging their character through trials and tribulations.
Yeah, they become kings and queens, leading with wisdom and compassion.
Right.
But even when they return to their own world,
Mm-hmm.
they carry those lessons with them.
Of course.
It's like the magic has subtly altered their perspectives, their understanding of themselves and the world.
Exactly.
And it raises an intriguing question for us. Can even brief encounters with the extraordinary,
Yeah.
with these moments that challenge our assumptions, push us beyond our comfort zones,
Right.
have a lasting impact on our lives?
Right.
Can we bring a bit of that Narnia magic back with us, even if it's not visible to the naked eye?
That's the question.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think we'll continue to grapple with it as we dive deeper into these stories. But one thing's for sure, we're just scratching the surface here.
I think so.
There's a depth and a complexity that's often overlooked.
Right.
And I have a feeling we're going to unearth some truly fascinating insights.
I agree.
So let's get to it.
Okay.
Um,
Let's do it. All right. And speaking of those deeper layers, let's talk about a character who really embodies that transformative power of Narnia, Eustace Scrubb
Oh, Eustace.
from Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
Yeah.
And initially
Well, he's not winning any popularity contests, is he?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He's whiny, selfish, about as enthusiastic about Narnia as...
Like a cat in a bathtub.
Yeah, there you go.
But that's what makes his journey so compelling, though, right?
Right? It is. Because he is forced to confront his own negativity,
Right.
his own inner dragon, so to speak.
Yeah. And that transformation is really brilliantly depicted through his literal turning into a dragon.
Right. It's such a powerful visual metaphor
Yeah.
for how our internal state can manifest externally.
Right.
His greed, his self-centeredness,
Yeah.
it just becomes so apparent even to himself.
Yeah, and it's only through this painful process, aided by Aslan,
Right.
that he sheds that dragon skin.
Both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, it makes you think about the dragons we might be harboring within ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Those negative thought patterns or those self-sabotaging behaviors.
Yeah.
Do we have the courage to confront those? To allow ourselves to be transformed,
It's a great question.
even if it's uncomfortable?
And Eustace's story offers this glimmer of hope, though, right? It suggests that even the most cynical,
Right.
the most self-absorbed among us can change, can find redemption when confronted with compassion.
Right.
And given that chance to start anew.
Right.
But it's not passive.
No.
It takes effort. It takes a willingness to let go of those old patterns and embrace a new way of being.
And that brings us back to that theme of responsibility, which seems to be woven into the fabric of Narnia.
It really is.
You know, these characters, whether they're kings and queens, talking animals, or even grumpy dragons,
Right.
they're constantly being called upon to act, to make choices.
And to make choices that have repercussions.
Yeah, and those choices often come at a cost. Think about the Pevensies in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Right.
They're children thrust into a war, forced to make decisions that have life or death consequences.
It's a heavy burden.
It is.
Especially at such a young age.
It's a reminder that leadership isn't about power or privilege.
Right.
It's about taking responsibility for our actions,
Right.
understanding that our choices have ripple effects,
Right.
and being willing to step up and fight for what's right,
Exactly.
even when it's difficult.
Right.
And speaking of difficult choices,
Yeah.
we can't forget about the prophecy that kind of looms over Narnia.
Right.
This ancient prediction about 4 humans becoming kings and queens,
Right.
restoring Narnia to its rightful glory.
Right. Prophecies are a common element in mythology and fantasy.
Yeah.
But they raise more questions than answers, don't they?
They do. If everything is preordained, what's the point of free will?
Exactly.
Where does choice fit in?
Right, that's the paradox.
Yeah.
The Narnian prophecy, it doesn't dictate every action or choice. It provides a framework, a destiny. But it's up to the characters to navigate the path, to make decisions that ultimately fulfill.
Right.
Or defy that preordained fate.
It's like those choose-your-own-adventure books, where you have the illusion of choice, but ultimately you're guided toward a predetermined ending.
Right, right.
But in Narnia, those choices feel weightier, more consequential.
And that's where the deeper magic comes into play again. It's not about manipulating events or controlling outcomes.
Right.
It's about setting things in motion, providing a guiding force,
Right.
but allowing individuals the freedom to choose their path.
It's like that idea that destiny is a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
It's not about reaching that fixed point. It's about the growth and transformation that occur along the way.
Absolutely. And that's reflected in the very structure of the Chronicles. We see
Yeah.
different characters,
Right.
different timelines, different perspectives on the unfolding events in Narnia.
Yeah.
It's not a linear narrative. It's this tapestry woven from multiple threads.
And each of those threads contributes to the richness.
Right.
The complexity of the world that Lewis created. We get glimpses into Narnia's history.
Yeah.
The myths and legends, triumphs and tragedies. It's like peeling back layers of an onion,
It is.
revealing more depth.
With each story.
And one of those fascinating threads is the story of Aravis and Hanuman.
Yes.
In The Horse and His Boy,
Yes.
you have this young woman, Aravis,
Right.
escaping a forced marriage,
Right.
embarking on this perilous journey
Yeah.
with her talking horse, Hanuman.
Right.
This is a story about freedom,
Yes.
about challenging societal expectations,
Yeah.
forging your own path, even when it's dangerous.
Exactly. And it's set against the backdrop of Calormen.
Right?
This foreign land that contrasts so sharply with Narnia.
Yeah, it's ruled by this tyrannical emperor.
Right.
The people worship a false god, Tosh.
Right.
It's like we're seeing Narnia from the outside,
From the outside.
through the eyes of those who perceive it as an enemy.
Exactly. And that outsider perspective, that clash of cultures and beliefs, it adds another layer of complexity to the narrative.
It does.
Yeah.
It forces us to consider the idea that truth and faith,
Right.
even good and evil, can be perceived differently depending on your cultural lens.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that there's always more than one side to the story.
Right.
And that understanding requires empathy,
Right.
a willingness to step outside our own limited perspective. But even in Calormen,
Right.
even in the midst of oppression and fear, we see glimmers of hope,
Exactly.
acts of defiance,
Right.
and the subtle presence of Aslan's guiding hand.
Yes, and that's what's so compelling about these stories. Even in the darkest of times, even when it seems like evil is winning, there's always that possibility of redemption, of change, of good ultimately prevailing. And it often comes from those unexpected sources, from
Right.
those who are willing to stand up and fight for what they believe in, even when the odds are stacked against them.
Yeah, just making me think about how the Chronicles of Narnia are often categorized as children's literature,
Right.
but they grapple with some pretty heavy themes.
They do.
War, sacrifice, betrayal, the nature of good and evil.
Absolutely.
And they don't offer easy answers
No.
or simplistic solutions,
No, and that's why they continue to resonate
right?
with readers of all ages. They invite us to engage with these complex issues on a level that's both intellectually stimulating
Yeah,
and emotionally resonant. They don't shy away from the darkness,
right.
but they always offer that glimmer of hope, that reminder that even in the midst of despair, there's always something worth fighting for.
That's good. As we're exploring these threads, that these diverse stories
Right.
within the larger Narnian world,
Yeah.
I'm struck by the fact that Lewis isn't shying away from portraying the cost
Right.
of that struggle between good and evil.
Yeah.
It's not all
Yeah.
whimsical adventures and magical creatures.
Right.
There's real loss,
Absolutely.
real sacrifice.
Yeah. The stakes are very high in Narnia.
They are.
Characters face real danger. They make tough choices.
Right.
And those choices sometimes have really heartbreaking consequences.
Like Aslan's sacrifice on the stained table.
Right.
I mean, it's a pivotal moment in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
It is.
And it's both devastating and ultimately redemptive.
Right.
It makes you think about sacrifice in
Absolutely.
our own lives.
It does.
Those moments where we're called upon to give something up,
Yeah.
put the needs of others before our own.
And it's not always a grand, heroic gesture.
Right.
Sometimes sacrifice is about those small, everyday acts of kindness.
Yep.
Those
Well-
choices to prioritize compassion over selfishness,
Right.
even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable.
It's a reminder that true strength isn't about power
No,
or dominance.
it's not.
It's about the willingness to be vulnerable,
Right.
to put ourselves on the line for something greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the last battle,
Right.
the final chapter in the Narnian saga.
Right.
Bittersweet tale, isn't it?
It is.
Filled with both triumph and loss.
For sure.
The forces of good and evil clash
Yes.
in this final apocalyptic showdown.
Yeah.
I couldn't shake this feeling
Yeah.
of parallels to certain religious narratives,
Right.
especially with the concept of final judgment,
Uh-huh.
a separation of the righteous from the wicked.
That's a common interpretation.
Yeah.
And it's certainly understandable given Lewis's own beliefs.
Right.
But even if you approach it from a purely literary perspective,
Right.
the last battle raises these really profound questions about faith and doubt
Yeah.
and the enduring power of hope,
Right.
even in the face of overwhelming darkness.
There's this sense that the old Narnia is ending,
Yeah.
but it's not truly an end. It's a transformation,
Right.
a passage into something greater,
More real.
more real, more
More
lasting.
lasting.
Yeah, it challenges us to consider our own beliefs about mortality.
Absolutely, about what might lie beyond the veil
Right.
of this earthly existence.
Exactly.
Is it simply oblivion?
Yeah.
Or is there something more?
It's the big question.
A realm where those who have lived faithfully find their ultimate reward.
Yeah, those are big questions
They are.
that have pondered, philosophers and theologians
Right.
for centuries.
For centuries.
And it's fascinating that Lewis, through these seemingly simple stories,
Yeah.
invites us to engage with these profound concepts
Right.
in a way that's accessible
Yeah.
and thought-provoking.
And that's the magic of Narnia, isn't it?
It is.
It sparks our imagination,
Right.
but it challenges us to think critically,
Absolutely.
to grapple with complex issues.
For sure.
And to really explore the deeper meaning
Right.
behind the adventures and metaphors.
Yeah.
We've journeyed through enchanted forests,
Yeah.
sailed on fantastical ships,
Right.
witnessed epic battles.
We've seen it all between good and evil, but the real magic of the Chronicles
Yeah,
lies in its ability to stay with us
right.
long after we've closed the book.
It does.
It
Yeah.
prompts us to ask those deeper questions,
Absolute.
to search for those hidden truths,
Right.
and to recognize those maps of meaning in our own lives.
So as we close the wardrobe door on this deep dive into Narnia,
Yeah.
what stands out to you? What resonates most deeply? What
Yeah.
questions linger in your mind?
Yeah.
Perhaps it's time to revisit these tales,
I think so.
to rediscover those familiar stories with fresh eyes
Yeah.
and a deeper understanding of the themes
Absolutely.
that are woven into their pages.
And remember, the magic doesn't end when the story does.
It doesn't.
It lives within us,
It does.
in our capacity for courage, for compassion,
Right.
for choosing good even when it's difficult.
Exactly.
So keep that Narnian spirit alive, folks,
Keep it alive.
and never stop exploring the wonder and the possibility
The wonder and the possibility.
that lies within you and the world around you.
I love it.
Until next time, happy reading.